Hi, this is Stephanie from the Pasadena Public Library, and today I'm going to show you how to make a pennant banner just like this. I just have some paper, scissors, and a pen here to draft my triangle, and 4 different fat quarters of fabric. You can buy pre-made double fold bias tape, or you can make your own, as I am going to later in this video. You'll want about half a yard of fabric to make the bias tape, and then a bias tape maker. I have the 18mm size, which is about 3/4 of an inch, but you could also use a 1-inch size. That would work as well. You'll also want some flexible measuring tape. I've just draped this on the wall where I plan to hang my banner, and I know that I want my finished banner to be about 90 inches. So using some paper and a ruler, I've just made a triangle which is 6 inches across and 8 inches tall. So you can kind of see here how you would place this pattern piece if you wanted your print to be all in the same direction. But if you don't have a directional print on your fabric, you can really flip this around and fit a lot more triangles out of a fat quarter. For something like this though, where I don't want my books to be upside down, I need to make sure that I'm cutting these all in the right direction. And to save myself some time in cutting, I've just placed 2 fat quarters on top of each other. That way I can cut through 2 layers at a time. And these are both prints that don't have up or down to them, so I can cut them very close together. To estimate how many pennants you'll make, take the length in inches you want for your finished banner and divide by 7. So for me, I divided 90 inches by 7. I got 12.8, and I rounded down to 12 banners. That means I will need to cut out 24 triangles, as each banner uses 2 triangles. Now I'll start pinning everything together, so I just take 2 of the same triangle and pin them right sides together along the long edges. Once you have everything pinned together, I'm going to start marking that pivot point at the bottom of each of these triangles. So I'll take my pattern piece and I'll mark my 1/4 inch seam allowances right along these edges at the bottom, and where they intersect, that is my pivot point. So I'm going to take an awl, or you could use a sharp pen, and just poke a little hole right there, and that is my pivot point. So I can lay this pattern piece right on top of my fabric, and I'll make a mark right there. Hopefully your pin is not in the way. If you aren't sure where a 1/4 inch is on your sewing machine, just measure over from where your needle is. For me, it's right where this plastic piece on my foot meets the metal part of the foot. So I'm going to use that as the guide for where I'll line up the edge of my fabric. Stitch with a 1/4 inch seam allowance along the long edges, pivoting at the bottom corner. Leave the top edge unstitched. Now repeat with all your triangles. For me, I prefer to just stitch right onto the next triangle instead of stopping and cutting my threads. It just works out a lot faster. Remember, when you pivot, you want to do that with your needle down so that you don't lose your spot. To make turning out these triangles easier, I'm just trimming off the bottom corner on all of these. Be careful not to cut through your stitching line. I'm also trimming the seam allowance in half along the bottom several inches of our triangle. That should reduce the bulk and allow the triangle to press much flatter. Now turn your triangles right side out and press them flat with your iron. If you have a blunt tool like a knitting needle or a chopstick, you can use that to press out that bottom corner as much as possible. An optional step is to top stitch around both long edges of your triangle. I just placed some folded up fabric here to level out my foot, and I'm going to stitch about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. I'm just using an edge stitch foot to help me do that nice and straight. And again, I've used that wad of fabric at the back of my foot when I pivot. That just helps level out the foot. Now I'm going to make my own bias tape. I have marked some diagonal lines across my fabric with some fabric marker, and now I'm going to cut these out. Because I want my finished double fold bias tape to be 3/8 of an inch, I am making strips that are about 1 1/4 inches. Basically, you want to take the finished size you want and multiply it by 4, and that's how you know what size your strips should be. So if I were making 1/2 inch bias tape, I would want to cut 2-inch wide strips. Now you're going to take your bias tape strips and you're going to pin them together, and you want to stagger them slightly where you pin them, just like this, and that results in everything lining up correctly once you sew that seam with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I'll show you that again. Just place them right sides together, and there you go. You can see there's about a 1/4 inch sticking out on the side, and that is what we want. Just like that. So if this looks kind of funny to you, I'll just demonstrate to you how this works. I'm just going to draw in my stitching line there at a 1/4 of an inch, and you can see that these two strips are actually lining up along that stitching line. And I'm going to pin it right there along the stitching line I've marked. And then when I open this up, you can see everything is lined up correctly. Now stitch all of those bias tape seams together at 1/4 of an inch. Now I've gone ahead and pressed open all of those seams and trimmed them so they're not sticking out. And then I'm just going to run this right through my bias tape maker. So you'll want to heat up your iron and have some steam in it. And I'm just going to press this as it comes out of the bias tape maker all the way along this entire strip. Then once you've done the whole strip, you'll just fold it in half and press it again. And that's how you make double fold bias tape. Now trim any little bits sticking up from the top of your triangle so you have a nice straight edge. Now you want to arrange your pennants evenly along your length of bias tape. Leave about 1 inch or more in between each pennant and pin in place. Make sure as you pin those triangles into the bias tape that everything is pressed up as far as it can so everything is nicely enclosed. Remember to also leave extra bias tape along the ends for hanging. I've left 9 inches extra along each end. Now stitch all the way along your bias tape to enclose the bias tape and the pennants. You may need to sometimes pick up your presser foot to keep your pennants from bunching up as it goes underneath the presser foot. I also like to use this awl to help me arrange everything. And there is the finished banner. I hope you guys give this a try and you enjoy this project. I think it would be really cute with some Halloween fabric or Christmas fabric or really any fun print. Happy sewing!